Why is Goblin Piledriver never sad? Because he has protection from the blues.
This video is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. with free weekly content and free shipping on orders over $150. You can save 5% site-wide by using the promo code MTGMudsta. And 401 Games, Canada's one-stop shop for trading cards, board games, and hobby supplies. They've got an amazing loyalty program and an easy-to-use and robust buy list. And if you use the promo code MTGMudsta, your first purchase of MTG sealed and singles will be 5% off. If you're looking for a direct way to help the channel, please consider joining my Patreon and becoming a member of the generic Goblin Gang. Hey gang, and welcome back. Today's game finds Mika, Max, and the triumphantly returned Kevin joining me in my basement for our Secret Santa deck swap. In today's game, I have built Mika the Ninth Doctor and Adric, focusing on upkeeps, and his opening hand has Lilting Refrain, Midnight Clock, Survivor's Encampment, Island, 2 Mountains, and Charmbreaker Devil. Mika has built Kevin Isperia, which is all about flyers. He's keeping Celestial Colonnade, Skybridge Towers, Plains, Scouting Hawk, Remorseful Cleric, and a Marble Diamond. Max has built me a Flamewar deck and wants me to discard my hand to draw a bunch of cards. And I keep Nimblewright Schematic, Servo Schematic, 2 Swamps, Bloodfell Caves, Barren Moor, and a Slagstone Refinery. Last but not least, Kevin has built Max a Ria Ivor deck, which wants to win through combat, but not in the traditional sense, and he keeps Command Tower, Rogue's Passage, Temple of Silence, Plains, Eradicator Valkyrie, Paladin Class, and Kabira Takedown. Mika wins the die roll and starts us off. He plays a Mountain. Kevin draws and plays a tapped Celestial Colonnade. I play a Bloodfell Caves, which comes in tapped, and gain 1. Max plays a tapped Temple of Silence, scrying 1. Mika draws and plays an Island. He then casts Lilting Refrain and passes to Kevin. Kevin plays an Island and casts Marble Diamond. I draw and play a Swamp. I then cast Flamewar on her backside as the Streetwise Operative, and I pass to Max after that. Max draws and plays a Command Tower, and then casts a Wayfarer's Bauble, and then a Paladin Class, and passes. Mika puts a counter on his Refrain during his upkeep, and draws. He then plays a Survivor's Encampment, and then casts the Ninth Doctor. Moving to combat, he swings the Doctor at me for 2, and passes. Kevin plays a Scouting Hawk in his main phase, and puts a Plains into play. He then plays a Skybridge Towers, and passes after that. I draw and play a Mountain. I then cast Bloodforged Battle Axe and equip it onto Flamewar. Going to combat, I swing my commander at Max and deal 4. He takes the hit, and I exile my top 4 and make another Battle Axe. I then sacrifice the Battle Axe token to flip Flamewar and put a +1/+1 counter onto them and pass turn. Max draws, plays a Plains, and passes. Mika untaps his Doctor and gets a second upkeep, putting 2 counters onto the Refrain, and then draws for turn. He plays a Mountain and swings the Doctor at me again for 2. I take the hit, and in his post-combat main phase, Mika casts Stirring Bard and takes the initiative. He goes to find an island, putting it to hand, and passing. Kevin draws and plays Prairie Stream. He then casts Isperia and moves to combat. He swings the Hawk at me for 1 and passes after that. I draw and play a Swamp. I then cast a Servo Schematic and get a Servo token from it as it enters, and then have to re-equip the axe onto Flamewar again and go to combat. I swing Flamewar at Mika, dealing 5. With my commander connecting, I gain the initiative, exile my top 5, and make another Battle Axe token, plus convert my commander. I then sacrifice the schematic in my post-combat main phase to once more convert Flamewar and get another Servo token, and then pass. During my end step, Max sacrifices his Bauble to find a basic Swamp and moves to his turn. Max draws and plays Ria Ivor. He then plays a Rogue's Passage's land for turn and passes. Mika untaps his commander and gets 2 upkeeps, adding 2 more counters onto the Refrain and drawing for turn. He then plays an Island and swings the Doctor at me. I chump with the Servo, and Mika then plays a Midnight Clock in his post-combat main phase. He then casts a mirror image, cloning the Stirring Bard and regaining the initiative. With nothing else, Mika passes. Kevin draws and plays an island. He then plays Steel of the Godhead on Isperia, and then casts a Remorseful Cleric and goes to combat. He swings Isperia at me as he knows a card in my hand since I'd revealed a mountain from the initiative, and the Scouting Hawk goes at Mika to steal the initiative back from him. Kevin then correctly names mountain, and I have to reveal my hand, which includes a very scary Marionette Master, and Kevin then gets to go and tutor for a Thieving Skydiver with Isperia. With nothing else, Kevin passes. I draw and play my mountain. I then go to combat and swing the Flamewar at Kevin. He takes 4, this gets me the initiative and acts on my top 4 as well, and once more Flamewar transforms. I then activate Flamewar to discard my hand and get all of those exiled cards, and then sacrifice one of the Battle Axe tokens to once more transform Flamewar. I then follow up by casting a Bag of Holding, and then Street Urchin, and then move to discard and pass to Max. Max draws and goes to combat. He puts Ria's trigger on herself and then swings it at Kevin. Kevin declares no blocks and takes nothing, while Max gets to make 3 1/1 Toxic Might tokens. After combat, Max then plays Eradicator Valkyrie and passes. Mika continues to tick up his Refrain and Midnight Clock, and then draws her turn. He then plays a Prismari Campus, and gives his Doctor Menace with a Stirring Bard, and then goes to combat. He swings the Doctor at me, taking back the initiative. And after combat, Mika plays Mind Unbound, and then passes to Kevin. Kevin draws, and cycles a Secluded Step. He then plays a Kick Thieving Skydiver, and steals my Flamewar. He follows it up with a Flaming Fist, and then goes to combat. He swings Isperia at Max and the Scouting Hawk at Mika. He whiffs off his first Isperia hit, but with Double Strike, he's able to name a Herald of Anguish and gets a tutor. Kevin then grabs a Wandering Eye with the tutor, and then gains the initiative and puts 2+1/+1 counters onto Isperia as he moves to the next room. With nothing else, he passes to me. I draw and play a Swamp. I then play an Ichor Wellspring and draw a card. I then follow that up with Key to the City. Without my commander though, I pass, and during my end step, Max casts Village Rites, sacrificing a Might token to draw 2. Max draws and plays Kaya Geist Hunter. He then downticks Kaya and goes to combat, putting Ria's trigger on the Valkyrie. He then swings Ria at me and the Valkyrie at Mika. I chump with a servo, and Mika declares no blocks, but the Valkyrie doesn't actually do damage, and instead, Max gets to make 10 mites thanks to Kaya's ability and the Valkyrie. In his post-combat main phase, Max then improvises out a Herald of Anguish, and then plays a Swamp and passes, and all of his opponents discard a card. Mika puts a counter onto his Refrained, Mind Unbound, and Midnight Clock, and then draws 2 from the Mind Unbound and 1 for turn. He then plays an island and casts Nasari, Dean of Expression. He follows up with the Strionic Resonator and passes to Kevin. Kevin goads the Herald of Anguish with the initiative and then draws for turn and plays a Plains. He then plays the Wandering Eye, and we all play with our hands revealed, which is my least favorite mechanic in the game. Going to combat, Kevin swings Flamewar at Max, Isperia at me, and his smaller flyers at Mika. I can't block Isperia, so he gets to tutor twice, getting himself a Spirit and a Naz. Mika also takes 4, and Max takes 7 from Flamewar. This has Kevin exiling his top 7 from Flamewar's trigger. After combat, Kevin then plays a Selfless Spirit, and then casts Time Wipe and sacrifices the Spirit to save his board. Mika, however, finally cashes in his Refrain and counters the spell, and with nothing else, Kevin then passes. During his end step, I loot a card with a Bag of Holding. Mika's Midnight Clock goes off on my upkeep, and he shuffles his graveyard and hand into his library and draws a fresh 7. I then draw for turn. I play a Rogue's Passage, and then cast Armix and pass to Max. Max draws for turn, and in his main phase, upticks Kaya to buff a Might, not to mention gives his whole team Death Touch. He then goes to combat, and gives his Herald of Anguish the Ria Ivor trigger. He swings his mites at Kevin, and the Herald goes at Mika. Kevin doesn't have enough blockers to stop the poison, but does block and takes a mite out with him. Mika takes 0 damage because of Ria Ivor's ability, but Max does gain 5 more mites. Max then passes, and during his end step, Mika taps the Doctor with the Survivor's Encampment. Mika untaps and gets the Doctor's ability, copying it with the Strionic Resonator, giving him a total of 3 upkeeps. He then draws 3 with the Mind Unbound, and exiles 2 cards with the Nasari, and then draws 4 cards, and exiles another 2. He then draws 5 more cards, and exiles another 2 cards, and then moves to his actual draw step. He then plays an Izzet Signet, and with that on the stack, Max responds casting Kabiri Takedown, and targets Nasari. Mika responds to this, casting Despark from the exiled cards to exile the Herald, and both spells then resolve. Mika then plays a Kelpie Guide, and goes to combat, and swings the Doctor at Max. Max double blocks with his Valkyrie and Ria, and then casts Your Temple is under attack, picking the mode to make his creatures indestructible. With nothing else, Mika passes. I draw and play a Buried Ruin. I then cast Nettle Cyst, and equip it onto Flamewar, and then sacrifice my Wellspring to ping the Valkyrie and kill it with Street Urchin. I then activate Key to the City, making Flamewar unblockable, and go to combat, swinging it at Max. Max dies from commander damage, and I gain the initiative, and after combat, I then sacrifice my Bloodforged Battleaxe to transform Flamewar once more. Mika draws 6 from Mind Unbound, and then draws for turn. He plays a Mountain, and recasts the Doctor, and then gives it haste and menace with the Bard. Mika then swings the Doctor at me for 2, and regains the initiative, making a 4/1 skeleton token. He then plays Caves of Chaos Adventurer, finishing the Undercity. This lets him get a Tomb of Horrors Adventurer, and he once more takes the initiative again, going to find a basic land and passing turn. I draw and play Tenza, Goto's Maul, and then equip it and the Nettle Cyst to Flamewar. I follow up by activating Key to the City and target Flamewar to make her unblockable, and then go to combat. Mika's Kelpie, however, has a different idea, and he activates it to tap her down. Without a good attack, I just pass turn. Mika uses the Strionic Resonator to get 2 additional upkeeps as he untaps the Doctor, then deals 5 to me with the Undercity. He then draws a ton of cards off the Mind Unbound, and then draws for turn. Mika then uses the Kelpie Guide to tap down my last blocker, and swings out for lethal, winning the game. Game review time. This game was 1 hour, 27 minutes, and 36 seconds. It was a pretty decent length, although it was a bit on the long side since all of us were really learning how to play the deck at the same time as we were actually playing the deck, so that made things go a bit slower. Also, Mika's turns took a little while longer due to all the extra upkeeps he had, and I was so proud to see how well the deck did after having spent so much time to build it. We'd restricted ourselves to having basically a $50 budget, and working in those constraints can be pretty tough. It's surprising how costly cards are, and they add up very quickly. I also really enjoyed Flamewar. I think Max did a great job building her, and he balanced her 2 abilities really well, between giving ways to pump up her power, which meant that I'd get a bigger hand later on, and having things to sacrifice. I never really felt like I didn't have anything to do, except for that point where Kevin stole my commander. Isperia did a lot of damage, and Kevin was the big bad for most of this game, despite his very humble beginnings. Steal the Godhead and then the Flaming Fist giving his commander double strike was terrifying, and the fact that he was tutoring for sometimes upwards of 2 cards was just absolutely insane. He had so many good answers, and I think if that time wipe had actually resolved, he would have handily won the game. Max's Ria Ivor deck was cool, and considering Kevin said that he built the deck to not focus around toxic or poison, it was funny to see that he actually got killed by that very mechanic. This video wouldn't be possible without the help from my sponsors, Cool Stuff Inc., Multizone, Original Magic Art, and Alter Sleeves. But it definitely wouldn't be possible without the help from you, the viewers, and my patrons. So I just want to say thank you for watching, and to remember, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.